You know, while we're waiting, what I would like, hey Dave Miller, good to see you too. Hey, so before we get started, and I always like to chit
Hello.
chat for a minute here before we get into some of the meat because I want to make sure everybody gets in transition from the last meeting. I'm kind of curious, what are you guys seeing right now? Do you see five boxes? Do you just see my face? What do you see on the screen? I know. Gallery view has active three boxes. Wonderful. That's perfect. So you can see Thomas, Robert, and me. Excellent. Look at all those threes, magic number. Here's
Mhm.
something else I'd love for you to put into the chat. Okay, we got it. Three. So, but I know you're all excited to chit chat, and I love that. That's one of my favorite things about doing webinars these days. Everybody wants to talk, and that's what makes these things so fun. So, Dave is on the bottom of the screen. Can you adjust that, please? Put me right up at the top if you wouldn't mind.
You're the
All right,
foundation. You're what everybody's built on top of, Dave.
fair enough. What I would love to see from everybody in the chat, tell us your name and the organization you're from. And maybe one more thing, tell us what it is you're interested in getting out of this conversation today. The conversation is centered around transforming the future of membership and marketing with AI and automation.
But
And
that's the good thing about the fireside chat, right? Is that we can talk to what people want to talk about as opposed to us just sharing our scripted information. So,
right. And so I just want to say, like, I'm very accustomed to doing podcasts. I do a couple podcasts, one called Association Strong in our space. Robert was just on there not too long ago for representing BettyBot.
mm,
And so we're mirroring this webinar, for lack of a better word, on this podcast model. The preparation involved us talking through themes and topics. We do not have a very specific set of questions that we're going to go into, and I'll summarize that for you in a minute. We do not have a deck. We do not have slides to walk you through.
no,
I certainly hope you can stay focused, not seeing the slides here. Um, Let me start by introducing myself. I am Dave Will. I think I know many of you already from the industry and perhaps from being a client of PropFuel, or at the very least from being on the list of people that we talk to regularly. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PropFuel, and PropFuel is it's a platform that utilizes SMS and email to engage your members in a way that's completely different from any other mechanism we're using right now. We use this methodology that centers around three stages: ask, capture, and act. And the idea is around listening a little bit more than talking, right? So emails, regular broadcast systems are all about doing a lot of talking, telling people things, maybe listing out all the cool things you're doing. What you're doing is you're telling people stuff. So what we're doing here at PropFuel is we're letting you do the talking using Forms and Real Magnet and HubSpot and Pardot. Use those tools for talking, but PropFuel is about listening. So you're going to ask questions so you can capture a little more member insight and hopefully create some more relevance. And it works hand in hand with HubSpot and Real Magnet and Informs and so on. So that's what PropFuel does. That's the foundation by which I'm looking at AI and automation as it relates to thinking through membership and marketing. With that, I have with me two very good friends of mine, Robert Barnes and Thomas Altman. Robert from BettyBot. Robert, you want to introduce yourself?
thanks, Dave. Yeah. So yeah, Rob Barnes. Um, I am a co-founder and CEO of BettyBot. Relocated from Australia for this gig too, so I'm excited to be stateside first time permanently. So
Did you come all the way here for this webinar?
yeah. Just
That
flew
was
in.
really,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fantastic. The
But,
commitment, it's
but
excellent. Thank you for that.
things I do for you. Don't worry about that, Dave. Will. Look, excited to be here. One of the reasons that I did kind of upend my life and move to the States is because I've seen for the first time in a long time as an association executive the capability of a piece of technology to truly sort of transform the way we work as an organization. Betty is exciting because I've seen organizations invest so much money, time, resources, staff into building this body of knowledge, right? And these are the bodies of knowledge that we professionals and people in industries all over the world rely on to do their kind of day-to-day work. Super hard to interrogate that body of knowledge on a daily basis, though, because Search gives you the list of everything that maybe is available, but you've still got to read it all. You've still got to discern what is useful. Betty has made that, and the capability of generative AI has made that a completely different kind of ball game now. And so we're excited that this is something that is an applicable tool for associations, no matter where they are. And I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that conversation today, because I think that associations in the age of AI are going to come into their own again, like they haven't done for maybe a while now. And this tool is unlocking that knowledge in a way that we've never seen before.
Thank you, Robert. By the way, Thomas, before you introduce yourself, I'm reading through all these comments and totally paying attention, Robert. Totally listening to everything. But I'm reading through all these comments, and it's pretty cool to see the theme. I'd love for you to read through them as well while we're in between comments here. And then before we get into the real topics, let's discuss whether we think we're on track for addressing people's needs. All right, Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, so I won't take too much time with little old me, but my name's Thomas Altman. I'm co-founder of a company called Passio. At our core, we are an AI lab, right? And our mission is to bring cutting edge AI research to the association market in innovative ways that further your missions, right? So what I do, I spend my days talking to as many association professionals as I possibly can, trying to be on the forefront of where the needs are and where people's thoughts are with regards to AI. I also stay on top of a lot of the cutting edge research. So I'm in there reading the academic papers that are published, and I try to spend a lot of my day mapping those two things together. Every once in a while, we find something that really works and can be productized and brought to the market to really push your motions forward. And one of those things is BettyBot. So that's how Rob and I, we'd worked together previously, but that's how we came together to kind of jointly work on BettyBot together. So he's making it a little bit more of a professional thing and not just a hacky idea that I had.
It's really interesting, Thomas, how complimentary you are, because you are one of the smartest people I've ever met. You're the kind of guy, and this is, and Robert and I have both known Thomas for quite a while, but Thomas will have this idea, and he'll talk about it in the sweetest, kindest way, and then he'll go off in a corner, and like 2 hours later, he'll come out, "Hey guys, look what I built! Like, this is pretty cool, isn't it?" And it's this world-changing philosophy. So today, so let me start with why. So I reached out to these guys, Robert and Thomas, at BettyBot, and Robert and I were talking. My understanding of the first 20 or so customers, Robert, that you've brought on board since you went live with BettyBot in November, give or take. Was it November?
Yeah, October, early October. I think the first sort of tranche coming on. Yeah, late October, November last year. Yeah.
Since you've gone live in around that time, you've brought in about 20 new clients, which is really a good number. I don't think it's overwhelming in the way that you can't deliver on what you've sold, but at the same time, it just shows the attraction to what it is you guys have built.
Yeah.
And here was the really interesting thing. When you were sharing with me some of the clients you brought on, it caught my eye, because half of them, like literally half of them, were also clients of PropFuel. And I can see, I'm looking through this list, and I see a lot of our friends and our clients here in this list, and as well as some people that we're talking to now, and same with you. So I thought that was striking. Of 64,000 associations in our space, granted, there's maybe 20,000 associations that are have a budget of any kind to do things with, but still, it's striking that of the 20 associations that you have, half of them are also working PropFuel. And I think what that speaks to is there's a group of organizations out there that are progressive, they're innovative, they want to make change, and they're embracing it, they're actually doing it. So kudos to you guys that are here today, because what that shows is that you're ready to embrace new ideas. So well done. Kudos to all you guys out here.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're breaking the ice, so to speak, with new pieces of technology like PropFuel, and it's kind of demonstrating that there's perhaps an internal culture at those associations for looking forward, embracing different stuff. And it's not as scary as it sometimes sounds, particularly when you start talking about AI, the general term that it's become now, AI, and obviously lots of people in the chat talking about this is my first time thinking about AI. This is my first time. I like that whole conversation is pretty common in
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. So in the chat, I'm seeing a lot of comments like learning about AI, applying AI to marketing and membership. Um, some in there about automation, which is good because we put that in the title of this presentation. I think it's hard to separate AI and automation, but we'll touch on that in a second. So we have three themes, three areas that we're going to dance around for the next half hour or so. We're certainly going to keep an eye on your comments, your questions. Please jump in if there's something you want us to discuss, if there's a question you have, if you have a comment that might counter, or if you agree with something one of us says, put it in the chat, because that's what's going to drive this conversation. It's really hard to get 100 people in a conversation together. Not to say we haven't done it, but the three themes we're talking about: AI fatigue. I think I think Thomas might have brought that up, but there's this everybody's talking about AI and has been, for the past year at this point. And there's a lot of themes coming out of it, and we're starting to get tired of hearing those same old negative themes, or maybe the same old promises about the future. So AI fatigue, the same things coming out over and over again.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to bring up was AI versus human, because I think there's this concern of like, we can't even get our phone automation down correctly. Now we have to do AI. Like, nobody likes to be pressing the buttons on the phone to get to talk to the right Verizon rep, right? Or so, like, where is this human versus the automation thing? Where is the intersection? At what point are the robots causing a worse experience than what humans could do, and what's the gain, and so on? So the AI versus human is something I'd really like to talk about. And then there's a third component, which is around change management. I'm working on a webinar right now with a marketing firm called Hellmeyer that is very, very competent in change management. So we're going to have a whole session dedicated to that. But change management and embracing this and bringing ideas to your organization is another theme that we're going to be talking about today. Robert and Thomas, is there anything else based on the comments that you think we might want to get into?
I think we'll make sure that and Thomas, I think you're best placed to talk about this is with a lot of the first timers. I think it was like, where do I start?
Yeah.
Given the generality with how AI, or the term AI, is being used right now, I think it'd be a great day for Thomas to give everyone here that's kind of thinking about it for the first time or in those early stages is to get those tips from Thomas based on what he's learned.
Great. I just I added that to my notes. Well, and that's a great place to wrap, actually. So
yeah,
after all this conversation, where do we?
And then after that, we can just tell everyone to call Liz Puster. She's the expert anyway. She's done a great job with some of the stuff that she's been doing, and I see she's on the chat too. So we'll just.
You know what's so cool about this? I just love working in this industry, because I see somebody says, "Oh, we work with Hellmeyer. They're great," and I agree with you. I just met with Christine over there yesterday. There's Monica Baruti from APTA, and I saw her in here. I was like, "Hey, Monica, I just talked to my PT." And she's from, again, American Physical Therapy Association. I just talked to my PT, and I want to share a story with her. So Monica, if you get a chance, send me your email. I want to tell you a little something. So it's just so fun to see all these names in here. Let's jump into the topics for today. Let's start with AI fatigue. There seems to be a lot of noise in this space. And Thomas, I'm going to turn to you first. There's a lot of noise in this space. AI has turned into this, lack of a better word, a buzzword.
Yeah.
Where people use this so freely, and I think it's losing actual meaning when everything's AI. You want to start us off with this?
That's exactly what's going on. So AI does mean something, but it is a broad term, right? It's artificial intelligence, right? And what I've found when I talk to people is because it's such a broad, open term, people bring their own assumptions and biases and ideas into it. And sometimes that tends people to either shy away from it, right? There's a little bit of hesitancy that's probably not warranted in many cases once you dig into it, or they're not getting the results that they expect, right? Because they don't know what's happening kind of behind the scenes. So one of the things I always like to open with is like, let's take AI and let's demystify it. Let's give it its true name. Let's give it the true name and take away its power. I feel like this is sort of a David Bowie character from an 80s movie, right? Let's give it its true name, take away its power. You have no power over me, ChatGPT, right? And what it is, I'm going to give it its full name. You don't have to know this, but it is a decoder only transformer autoregressive network, right? What that means, you don't have to know that. That's just its name. Now it has no power because it's a specific thing. It's a next word predictor. When you're dealing with ChatGPT, and there's other types of generative AI out there, but let's focus on ChatGPT right now. What you're dealing with is an extremely sophisticated next word predictor. And what that creates is this illusion, this sleight of hand, right? When you're typing into ChatGPT or Gemini, it really feels like, hey, I asked a person or a thinking thing a question. It thought about the thing, it planned it out, and it started doing it. That is not what's happening behind the scenes at all. What is happening behind the scenes is you gave it some starting text, and then it predicts what the most likely next word is, right? And the magic here is that in order to do that at scale really, really well, you have to learn kind of concepts embedded within the starting text, right? And the same ideas apply to video, to images, and all these other AI techniques. You have to learn something about how the world really is in order to do stuff really well, which means if you want to interact with these things, you have to think about your starting text really well, right? You have to understand what concepts are embedded within the way you start these conversations. So just as a way of kind of demystifying it a little bit further, a little game I like to play when I talk to people, you can do this either type in the chat or think in your head. I'm going to say a starting phrase. I'm going to say some words, and I want you to think in your head, what's the next word, right? What word follows what I'm going to start with? So that starting phrase is once upon a time. I'm guessing almost everyone said there, right? That's the next word, right? And then if we go once upon a time, there was, right? And we can go once upon a time, there was a, right? And this is the next one, right? Once upon a time, there was a, maybe people throw that into the chat. I'm kind of curious to see what happens with that. But a little, yeah. A little boy, a frog, yeah. A princess comes up, a unicorn. Here's the important point. We get to that. How different is the story if I choose unicorn versus little boy, right? Those are total, we just changed the path that we're going down. That is what AI does. You come to an inflection point, and then if you're smart about the way you use this, those are tasks that can be accomplished, right? You can accomplish different tasks multiple times. And when you start thinking about this use of AI, we're basically forecasting out what could possibly happen and makes grammatical sense and relates to concepts you embedded earlier on. You can start to do really impressive things. You can write code, right? You can start describing a program that you want to exist, and it can write the code that does that program. You can create a marketing campaign. But in order to do all that stuff well, you could bring a membership renewal thing. That's actually how I started playing with GPT and OpenAI, is we would read into the AMS, I'd read a member profile, some data points from a member profile, and I said, now write an outreach campaign just for this person about what we know about them. And when you feed that information in a really smart way, the next words that come out are something actionable. And that's how I think we need to start thinking about it. So let's get away from thinking in AI, right? AI is a good marketing term, and it's, you know, I'm still going to say AI when I talk to people. But if you can think in terms of decoder only, autoregressive transformer networks, and what that really means, which is a really smart next word predictor, you kind of take its power away, and you take that power for yourself. The power from AI doesn't come from the AI, it comes from the human being using the AI. So I'm going to button this up. I think we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but to me, good AI is not AI. Good AI lets humans be more human, right? It allows you to do your stuff better. It takes away that, like, think about the thing you do where when you stop doing it, you don't feel human. Maybe that's you're in a spreadsheet. Maybe you're submitting an end of the week report to your boss, right? All that stuff you have to do that just, ugh. You don't have to do that anymore if you don't want to, if you use AI well.
I love that theme of not just AI, but technology in general, including automation, allowing humans to be more human. We're gonna get to that. Let's bring it back to the AI fatigue.
Right.
Robert, were there any things going through your head as you heard Thomas talking?
Well, it just
Or
reminded me
complete
that
blank slate.
it just reminded me of how smart Thomas, is,
Right? I
and
know.
another co-founder, Dre, is, and that's honestly one of the reasons that I jumped at the opportunity to come and do this, is because I get to work with them again. When they talk like that on our daily huddles and stuff, I have to put my hand up in the corner. So what was that term again? Like, you're learning every day. Yeah, I think the challenge for a lot of associations again is that the technology, the AI, the broad use of the term AI and the tools that are coming at us so fast that it's difficult to wade through all that to find. And as a couple of people have said in the chat now, it's like finding applicable use cases. Like, what are we actually going to do with this for ourselves? And then, of course, what are the risks associated with using a public AI model, a public GPT model with our own information, security, privacy, those sorts of things. It's a lot to take on in a short space of time, and that has created some fear, or perceptions of risk that I do not want to minimize. However, I don't think that they are risks that are any greater than any other application of technology either. There are some particular things about sharing, proprietary information with a public GPT, which have never existed before. Although you could argue that, sending an Excel file with your membership list on it accidentally via email is exactly the same, if not worse, than doing these sorts of things. So all of that risk and fear, while there's some very specific things, I'm sure, that relate to generative AI tools that haven't existed with other technologies, the broader risk profile to an association, in my opinion, hasn't changed with the application of AI or automation for that matter. It has given us a tool that we can use to generate knowledge at a rate that we've never been able to do that before, with the subject matter expertise of every one of our members in our profession, everyone in our industry, at a rate. So the AI as a generic term has created as many problems, I think, as it has opportunities for associations, particularly, and we can talk about that today. There are some very applicable high-level use cases which help people understand the application of a generative AI tool like BettyBot and why it's become so powerful and so popular so quickly, perhaps. And of course, then you link it to the automation and the listening tools like yours, Dave, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, hang on a minute, this is a whole different thing that we've never been able to offer before, but in partnership we can.
Well, actually, speaking of that partnership, I know Thomas and Cameron on my team have already come up with a way for PropFuel to capture interests and turn them into prompts, which then goes directly to BettyBot. So we've already got that connection between the systems where email acts as the trigger, capturing somebody's interest and then sending it over to BettyBot. So there's some super, super cool things we can do. No kidding, Jack. It is cool.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but smirk when I saw Michael's comment. Once upon a time, there was a generative pre-trained transformer network. That's what I love about this chat.
I'd actually like to see the end of that story now.
We can do it.
There's an interesting, of course you could, Thomas. So when Thomas was speaking, where my head went is naturally I try to challenge the things I'm hearing. My wife loves that about me. I try to challenge the words I'm hearing and some of the things you said. So what's the next word you would hear? Like once, and what should come next, right? And I could see a way in which automation would allow you to do that to a certain degree, right? Like if this word is used, then choose one of these words to go next based on certain rules, like an if this, then that. The difference, and I think where AI comes into play, and Thomas, I'd love to hear your correction to my my perception here, but the way I see AI is actually thinking in a much bigger universe using lots of data, which is why it requires a lot of data to work. But it's looking at all of the data out there that it can get its hands on and determining what is the best word to use, not just what did Microsoft or Google or PropFuel or BettyBot think of that I might want to say next, right? So what is this universe of possibilities and then what fits the best? And that's, to me, that's the biggest difference between AI and automation,
Yeah.
is the expanse to which it's choosing from.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with automation, if you've got a very set of explicit rules you want to be followed, right? That's automation. You might not want the generative AI in that mix to control it for the most part. Sometimes you might, sometimes you want a little bit in there. But if you have like follow these rules and you know what those rules are and you want to be done, you can tell AI to do that and it'll usually do pretty well. But you might also want just sort of the automation process, right? You might not want sort of this, ghost in the machine that's AI controlling that. You might just want to say, hey, when you have these scenarios, follow that, right? What you want AI for is for the exploratory nature of it, or being able to be creative or smart around maybe some of those squishier, like when it's not a clear if then, or if like getting to that rule is just going to take months of like digging in and interviewing all the subject matter experts and that kind of a thing. That's when AI comes in and that she can serve the purpose to guide people through based off of the collective knowledge that's ever been written down for all of humanity. So one way to think, sort of keep in my head the way I think about when interacting with some of these tools, is if I took all of the written knowledge, so my hands are going beyond the screen, right? All of the written knowledge of humanity, and then squished it into a little tiny talking ball. And then I could talk to that thing. That's what AI really is. And sometimes it's squished together and it gets jumbled up and it doesn't know where you're really going because it's just got too much going on. So you have to guide it. But that's really what you're dealing with there. And it can serve sort of decision-making process is okay. But when you want a script followed, automation on its own is what you want. More likely, you want the two together playing nicely with each other, which is sort of what we're trying to collaborate on internally with CAM and PropFuel.
I think I heard you say she.
Yeah.
Why, tell me, I'm curious, and I've heard you guys, both of you guys, and I know it's Betty Bot, right? I've heard you guys put a gender on it. I'm curious, either one of you guys, and I certainly don't mean to challenge that choice of words. Why do you do that? Is there a
It's
reason?
probably actually just a habit because I'm used to talking about Betty Bot and we've gendered Betty Bot as a she. So there's I don't see I don't think AI has like feminine energy or anything like that. I've been telling
No,
you.
no, I mean, like, why? Are you trying to make it
Tell them why Betty
friendlier?
though. Tell them why Betty though, Thomas.
But Betty is named
Yeah.
after Betty Holberton, who was a computer scientist from the 30s and 40s.
Oh, yeah.
She's one of those like the hidden figures of that time, made a lot of contributions, did a lot of the labor associated with advancing the study of computer science, like in the 30s and 40s. Like she was a founding figure within that frame. But because of the time in which she was operating, she did not get the recognition she deserved for that, right? Like a lot of the other people involved took the recognition for her labor. And what we wanted to do is use our platform to put a spotlight on sort of those contributions, right? Those were hidden contributions. Those were contributions that were not going made. So maybe there's a little bit of that, maybe trying to
Yeah.
backwardly retribute
That is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. I think you guys need to talk about that more. Like, I think I would say that in every introduction. I absolutely love that because it puts a real human story behind a piece of technology, which I think is a really, really good. I mean, that's how people connect, right? Like, I know personally I'm a lover, and Robert, I know you're a lover. Thomas, I think you've got some lover in you, although you have a lot of ones and zeros in you too. But I think lovers tend to attract themselves to stories. I want to hear that over and over and over again. Something I wanted to comment on though, I think and we can wrap up this AI fatigue component of the conversation in a minute, but I think a big part of confusion, because fatigue, I think in this sense, we're talking about fatigue and confusion and almost synonymously. I think a big part of the confusion or the fatigue comes from a lack of definition and really understanding what it is we're talking about. And so when there's cloudy knowledge about stuff and we just assign a word to a cloud, that word becomes cloudy itself. And so that's, I think, what we've done. And so the more times we can hear Thomas and Robert talk about and bring some clarity to these words, the less cloudy it'll become. Having said that, I do think there's AI in and of itself, and I've always seen it like this since it first came out, is more of a component than it is a tool. And maybe I'm using the wrong words, but I think just about every piece of technology is going to have AI in it as a component, doing things. So, in other words, are we going to implement AI this year? Well, do you use any technology? And if you do, chances are you're implementing AI, whether you like it or not. So that's kind of my perspective. Prop fuel falls in that category. Prop fuel was around before the AI rage a couple of years ago. So, and you look at prop fuel, and so we went from being a heavy automation system to now incorporating elements of AI to make everybody's jobs easier. And so what would normally take, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours to build a big campaign in prop fuel now, and where you're actually creating a campaign from scratch, now we have these things called AI blueprints that with the click of a button, it's scraping information off your site and taking some of the information that you gave it, and it's writing content and landing pages. So it turns you into an editor as opposed to a creator. So you go from a creator to an editor. So that's where AI is a component of what prop fuel is. Now with BettyBot, it's harder to refer to AI as a component when the vast majority of the functionality behind BettyBot is AI. Do one of you guys want to talk about that for a minute? Like, to what degree is AI a component versus the entire tool that you're using?
Go, Thomas.
Yeah, so I mean, it is, we call it AI first, right? So everything we try to do, we start with AI. And there is always a human in the loop, however, right? So we try to get all the automated sort of squishy thinking done by AI first. And that's what you interact with. When you interact with Betty, you're interacting with the AI system. In order to get sort of the pieces put in together behind the scenes, it's actually not just one AI. There are several component pieces of AI and a full architecture of like AIs collaborating together to make sure that the member is getting the right information in the right way. They're able to use that information how they want to. They're able to discover, right, the information using AI. There's so many tiny pieces behind the scenes, right? When you interact with the chat interface, you're just seeing sort of the front end of it. Behind the scenes, there's AIs collaborating on all sorts of stuff. And then underneath that are the human beings steering, right? So in the same way, like when you're in a car, right? You're not Flintstoning it like with your feet running in the car, right? The car is doing the driving, but you're steering, you're controlling where it goes. That's the human aspect of it. It's the same thing with Betty. Behind the scenes, we have humans. It's any of our clients and the people we work with are very much able to steer how Betty's able to move and respond to their members. But AI is doing most of the heavy lift.
You guys good if we move on to this theme of AI versus humans?
Yeah.
AI and automation, I'll say, versus humans. All right.
Yeah.
I think what's really, and Thomas, you started this off a few minutes ago. I think you said it out loud. It also showed up in the chat. Like, technology should be implemented to allow humans to do the things humans do really well. And I mean, sure, we'd need to define what that is, and certain humans do things well and others might not, but technology certainly does certain things really, really well. AI expands the breadth of which that is. Robert, in our conversation, you used a phrase that associations were formed by people. Do you want to expand on that? I mean, duh, right?
Yeah, sure. No, I think
Joy would be the answer to that, but
when I've been asked a couple of times, and you asked me this the other day, it's like, what's excited me the most about the opportunity for associations in the era of AI? Like, in my mind, I was coming back to, it's giving us the time back to be humans. So the machines can do the machine work. And I think even Liz might have put an hour rate in the chat. Like, she's like, it's giving us like 20 to 30 hours more back to do the human kind of work. To me, that's putting associations back in the era of AI. It's putting associations back at the forefront of knowledge management again.
Yeah.
And I say again because when I think back to when our associations were originally formed, it was a group of humans with ideas and debate and things about a common area of interest. That's what formed the association in the first place. And through the industrial era and the information age and the like, associations, I think, have been challenged. And even my own associations, you know, when I used to run a national federation in Australia at one point in time, and what was truly valuable to the individuals on the ground was so far from a lot of the conversations that was happening inside the association, because we were just trying to manage the entity. You know, it was governance, it was death by committee, it was death by PowerPoint, it was all this kind of self-serving. You kind of lose, because you've got to manage all of that, you know, through the systems and processes that were developed over the 19th and 20th centuries. Now we can give a lot of that work back to the machine and say, you know what, you take care of taking notes, taking minutes of meetings. Keep it safe, but you take care of that. I want to think about what we do with the outcome of that in a different way, and I need the time to do that. Well, we're getting all this time back at an exponential rate. And so the gathering of people to share ideas and knowledge about an industry or profession, associations are the best place organizations in the world, in my view, and I may be a little biased, because we have 100, 150 years of the knowledge of our industry and our profession at our disposal. What I want is I want tools and applications like Betty to make that available to the people today to create new knowledge that's going to be used tomorrow in those industries and professions. And that's possible now, and has only been possible really for the last 6 to 12 months. So it's going to be exciting going forward. But that, to me, is what is going to make associations human again. And that human experience and the things that make associations really powerful as organizations is going to come from the humanists, because we're going to use these applications and tools that are AI driven to do all the heavy lifting for us.
I really love that theme that you're talking about with knowledge transfer and handing some of that over to technology. And I mean, of course, it blows my mind to think about we're giving this over to technology when it was the thing that made humans so special in history. I don't know where I learned this, but at some point in my journey, I learned one or two things in school. One of the things was what, aside from our thumbs, what made us so special in the world of the animal kingdom was our ability to transfer knowledge from one, not just one person to another, but one generation to another. So what our ancestors learned and built, they could teach us, and then we would grow from there. What's that phrase? We grow on the shoulders of giants. Did I say that right? Anyway, so but you get the idea. So I visualize people sitting around. You're not gonna let that one go, are you? No. So there's giants somewhere in there. But I visualize us sitting around a fire and telling stories, and the story may come in the form of a fable, but it's teaching us something about the past. And of course, as we evolve, things change and we learn things and transfer knowledge in other ways. But I absolutely love the fact that we're utilizing technology to help us do that now. And BettyBot's a great example of being able to capture all of the information and knowledge inside an association and interact with the members at a beck and call. I mean, it's absolutely awesome.
Thomas uses this phrase, and Thomas, I know I say it in front of you, but Thomas uses this phrase, which I love. It's meeting a person at their point of knowledge need. That's what Betty is capable of doing now. It's like meeting someone at their point of knowledge need, and that can be anywhere about anything at any time. And for the longest time, associations are trying to predict what that knowledge need is going to be so that they can be ready with the webinar, the resource, the white paper. That's hard work, because you're going to miss the mark more often than not. You're going to meet someone's knowledge need, and it may be a segment of your membership. The generative AI tools, and obviously what I love about Betty is that no matter what question she gets asked, she can use the knowledge repository that she's been trained on, which is owned by the association. She can literally be trained on the entire body of knowledge of a profession or an industry that is owned by that association, and use that actively to answer that question. And so it doesn't matter why the person came there. It'll be different every time. She can meet that knowledge need. That's not something that I think we've ever been able to do before.
And the cool thing, the thing that sort of builds on top of that, what we've seen sort of emerge or evolve, like we didn't really plan for this, but it's become kind of a strong value add to what Betty can do in AI in general, right? Is when a member comes and they reveal their knowledge need to you, they ask a question, they're revealing a knowledge need, right? And when all your members, or a sizable chunk of your members, are repeatedly revealing these knowledge needs over and over again, what's happening is it's more of a loop, right? So yes, it starts with the history, the vast history and knowledge that you've created as an association, exposing that, pulling that back down to the members so they can get access to it and make it actionable. Then as people interact with it, we're discovering the next knowledge cycle, the next piece of information that associations can generate back and provide value back to their members, right? And that cycle of kind of, Dave, what you were saying, sitting around the campfire and telling stories and preserving traditions, but then also creating the next tradition that accelerates and that people get more participatory and more engaged with the knowledge itself because they're actively co-creating it in real time. And it's becomes a little bit more sticky member engagement experience when you're like, okay, I see myself in the knowledge that's being created, right? It's really fascinating thing to kind of be able to sit back and watch emerge.
This is part of the reason why I brought us together, because I love this 1-2 punch of Prop Fuel capturing the needs, the interests, right? In this, whether you like it or not, the way we communicate with our members, at least right now, is over email, right? And so over email, we're catching their needs and interests by listening, asking questions, and then from there we hand it off to Betty, who can expand and go much deeper based on the organization's knowledge base to help that one particular member. Every member journey is unique in that scenario, and that's what I love. So we're talking about AI versus human right now, or technology. Well, I'll change it, technology versus human. I'd love to see in the chat, what are the things that you think, and you pick, technology does well, what are the things humans do well? And while you're doing that, Robert and Thomas, I warned you I might do this, but there's something I want to share. I want to show you a great example in my book of technology and what it does well and what a human does well. And of course, given my worldview, my goggles, it happened in Prop Fuel. So I want to show this to you. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see what pops up when I share it. There we go. Okay. So in this scenario, this is ASAE. I don't know if we have anybody from ASAE with us today, but ASAE sends out this new member onboarding campaign. I think that's what this is. And it says, hey, what's most important? And there's our friend Jen Noveski over there. And and they ask, what's important to you as you manage your career this year? Because this is the kind of thing they're listening. What's important to you so that we can do something with that information? You know, the alternative is they send out email with like everything that's important to everybody. And they give you the work of figuring out what that looks like. And we've all seen those emails. They typically have about 50 links in them, and with no sarcasm, I mean, they have about 50 links in them, and they scroll on and on. They have 50 different images that might appeal to you or might not appeal to you. Anyway, in this scenario, somebody says, you know what, I want to get my CAE this year. That's something I'm working on. And they click on that. Now I might take you through a couple of slides. Yep, forget that. Hey, MSTA, I think someone's here today. Okay, so 3 months later, that takes you to so if they select that, now again, they get this email, they say, hey, I'm interested in my CAE, it puts them into a bucket, and they wait for 3 months. 3 months later, we might go and say, hey, remember when you told us you were interested in getting your CAE? Well, how's that going? You know, you could ask any number of questions. Imagine yourself actually standing in front of somebody having this conversation. Like, hey, Robert, you told me you're getting CAE, how's that going? You made any progress with that? Or have you had a chance to begin the pursuit of your CAE? Right? I probably wouldn't use those words, but in a more casual way, how's it going? Well, ASA did this with a hundreds of people that were pursuing this CAE. And this is an example of the chat. Now, you don't have to read all this, but I'm going to summarize it for you. So you'll see it's a yes or no thing. This person says, yeah, I've done something. They says, well, how can we help you? Is there any way we can support you in this process? And this poor person says, I wish you could lower the number of CEUs. I'm a single mother. It's hard for me to travel and participate. And it's a lot of work, man. And Amy responded back to this saying, I understand, Melissa, I've been in your shoes as a single parent. Now, BettyBot might say that, but are you going to believe her? This is actually a human being having empathy, sharing that empathy. And this one just happens to have a really happy story, because the answer says, hey, thanks. I did it. I got my numbers. We're making progress. Now, Amy in this scenario, did Amy help Melissa? I don't know, but at the very least, Amy said, Melissa, I'm with you. I got your back. I don't know if we can change the number of CAEs, the hours required, but I'm with you. And if there's anything I could do to help, let me know. And I just thought that was a beautiful example of human empathy engaging a member. Now, automation and AI, I think in this case, mostly automation, made it obvious to ASAE who needed the human attention, when they needed that attention, and what the attention needed to be about, right? So now, instead of looking at their 40,000 members, saying, gosh, who should we help today? They know here's a small group of people that actually, there's a red flag next to them because they need attention. And that's what's beautiful, I think, about technology, what technology does well, and what people do well.
Let me just pull on that thread for a little bit. And Thomas, I think we might get Betty up on screen in a minute, because I think you're going to see where I'm going with this. But that's a great story, Dave. And I tell you how that's similar kind of path, right? So what Betty wouldn't do is pretend to be a single mum. So that's not a problem. That's easily constrained, right? But what you could do is be part of that advice that was given to Melissa was around, here's a plan. I can help. Talk to Jamar. He'll get you a plan that'll help you get to your points. So Betty trained on UST's, or in this case, ASAE's full body of knowledge around what CAE opportunities are available. You can go to Betty and say, understood. I need my CAEs. I need 100 points in 3 months. Trained on all the event opportunities or CAE opportunities in a calendar. Betty could actually help you write that development plan. And so the idea of having to troll through calendars and all the different vendors and places like that, where that information is accessible, that next layer of, hey, the automation, what you got was the story about where the challenge was and really listened. And that the next thing is that an AI tool could actually build that development plan out. And similarly, so, a lot of people have been asking about what's the kind of a use case. Think about this. If education is a huge part of the work your association does, and most of them are, but professional credentials where they have to be managed, think about having a guidance counselor, like an AI-powered counselor saying, this is where I'm at, this is where I need to be, help me get there. That's what Betty is doing for some of our customers, is helping guide people through all the content, all the information, and all the events and education programs that are available to develop a plan that works specifically for them. Whereas typically that would have taken a really long time, probably, for a staff member to kind of pull it all together. Everybody can do that for themselves using Betty now.
All right. It's amazing how fast time flies when you're doing something like that. So it's so interesting. I think, first of all, we're not going to have a Q&A. If you have questions, put them into the chat and we'll incorporate it into the next 6 or 7 minutes before we wrap. Thomas, short question and answer just for you, and then I want to go on to a quick discussion about change management for maybe 5 minutes. Talk to me about the labor force versus AI. I know that's kind of one of these things that's looming out there where everybody thinks AI is going to take over the world.
Yeah. So I think
tell me your
actually,
thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think Elizabeth in the chat just now pretty much nailed it, right? So, I mean, this is a thing I think about a lot, right? People feel, this oncoming maybe sense of dread that AI is going to take over, right? And I think it's a legitimate concern. I don't think it's probably what's going to happen. And here's why, or at least being knowledgeable about the change that could come will help you navigate it better. I think regardless of what AI can do, let's assume AI can do anything a human can do, right? We will still be human, right? And once that shift takes place, or as the transition moves along the way, or even if we expect it to happen, we behave that way now with that expectation, the thing that will always be true is humans will be humans. We shift away from the technology side of things to the biology side of things. Like what is deeply embedded in our DNA, in our culture, that will be true regardless of what AI is here. And I think things like that are, I mean, having hearts and guts, right? I think we will yearn for interpersonal connection, which is where associations shine, right? Bringing people together. We will yearn for having a common purpose, right? With a sense of purpose or something more than just me, right? That's ingrained in us as a species to want to be able to participate in. Again, that's associations, right? Being able to corral people around this larger thing. Even if AI does all the work, we're still going to want that, a sense of mastery in my profession. Even if AI can do all the woodworking or art in the world, I will still enjoy drawing. I will still enjoy crafting, and I will enjoy getting better at that, right? Again, associations can kind of fit around that. That's why I think associations really are at the forefront of guiding AI to its best version of itself, right? And the last thing I think about, going back to literally the hearts and guts, like literally the materials that we're made of, at the end of the day, AI is going to be built on top of a computer chip with metal and bits and circuits and electricity flowing through it. We're going to be built on sort of flesh and blood and neurons, right? We're going to be squishier. And just because the things that we're made of, we're going to have different things that we create. Even if AI can be creative, and I believe it will be, we will create differently, which means the output will be different. And that sense of value, that provably human output, is going to be key, right? So if we can arrange our associations, our organizations, the entities we engage with on a day-to-day to preserve those larger aspects, I think we'll be set up for a very, very bright future. People who don't make that investment now may get left behind. And that's why we need to be very active in these types of conversations right now, so that we're, on the beautiful side of the AI outcome, right? And not the scarier one.
Ready for the change that's yeah.
What's that, Robert?
And ready for the change that's
Yeah.
happening to us right now.
Yeah, so change. Let's talk about that for the last minute or two of the conversation today. And again, we're putting together, PropFuel is putting together a webinar totally focused on, I think it's going to be in April, totally focused on change management, how to, and I think a lot of the people here are people that want to see change. They see things that they want to get to, and they acknowledge that in order to get from point A to point B, if there's change involved, if there's change in the results you want, then naturally you need to put some change into the process. So let's simplify this. Let's be coming off of today. Robert or Thomas, what do you think are the next steps for people to get involved, either specifically with BettyBot or more broadly embracing AI and better automation in their systems?
I want to start with the idea that I don't think it's change management that associations need to concern themselves with. I think it's change preparedness. I think rather than thinking about how do we change from what we're doing now to what we think we need to be, it's readiness for the change that's going to continue to happen regardless of what's kind of going on. So as things roll, and particularly at the rate of change within the AI era, if you like, is going to be exponentially greater than we've ever experienced before. What can we do to be ready to accept, adopt, approach, experiment with the changes that are happening at an application level, but also at a cultural sort of level? And so the one thing that I might recommend, and I talk every association that I talk to is start thinking about now how your strategic plan and your budget is ready for change. simple things like, let's have some money available to experiment with the things that are coming down the pike to see whether it's right for us. So rather than be scared of what we're not quite sure about, test it. Have some room for that. And so be ready to budget for and have people who are giving oversight to the changes that are going to continue to occur regardless of how ready we are, because the world's going to continue to happen. Let's be ready for that. And I think that that puts us in a much better position for managing the change inside our organization, both at a staff and a member level.
Thomas, anything you want to add?
I think he's right. I don't know if we can manage the change, right? I think we can prepare for it. I think participating, and that can mean the easiest way to participate is go into Chat GPT, the free version, and just try it. Just kind of get your hands dirty, learn the different techniques that are associated with it. Go into Gemini if you'd rather that, right? Just get some aspect of using it under your belt, because the more you get used to using it, the smarter you'll be about being ready for whatever may come.
Well, I'm not going to add any more to that. Looking at the time, what I do want to say is Robson on our team here at PropFuel put a nice little next steps. If you're interested, if there's more you want to talk to PropFuel about, if there's more you want to talk to Betty about, there's some links in there, and you can reach out to us each directly as well. Yeah. Really, really appreciate your time, Robert and Thomas. I really love talking to you guys about this stuff online in front of an audience or just offline, the three of us. And thank you to the audience for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to see you again, mate.
This was great.
Bye, everybody.